In this video we're going to be going over some cinematic lighting techniques on a seriously tight budget. So for this project I'm basically going to be lighting an American diner type setting. One problem, I don't actually have access to an American diner. So today I'm going to make one, and again budget has to be low. My inspiration for this look was the interior sets of the diner that they use in Riverdale. I really like the stylistic approach and the feel of this location. It's heavily stylized, and the approach that they've taken involves many of these techniques of lighting: quality, direction, amount and colour. Let's start by getting our little diner set up and framed. I'm making the set out of a cheap backdrop stand that I bought off Amazon for around 40 quid or $55. For the window, I can't remember how much these blinds were, but again, they would have been relatively cheap. For the walls, I just used a black bedsheet that I had laying around the house, and the way that I've got this shot framed meant that I didn't actually have to cut a window hole in the sheet. I could just have it draped over the stand on one side of the blinds. The blinds were secured using a couple of cable ties. I'm going to be shooting this at 50mm on a full frame. This is for a couple of reasons. One, so I can shoot a little tighter, as space isn't really a luxury that I have in this setting, and two, because it's one of the more natural focal lengths that I feel doesn't draw too much attention to itself. It offers a nice balance between telephoto compression, which is what I want because my backdrop and my setting is very small, and intimacy with the character on screen. I've got an external monitor on the floor, by the way. That's why I'm glancing down an awful lot as I frame this up. So because my set was very minimalistic to say the least, it was quite clear that this would be a very low-key lighting setup. Let's start with a key. I wanted this scene to look like it took place at night, and that there's perhaps a street lamp outside of the diner kicking some hard light through the window. For this I used a 60 watt at 10% intensity, just so it wasn't so extreme. This was also my choice of key because we're shooting on the shadow side of the face. I placed the key around 90 degrees to the side of the subject to achieve split lighting. This is where you have contrast on each side of the face and thus being split down the middle. Then I wanted there to be a backlight to give some separation between the subject and the background. As I was framing the shot up, I thought it'd be really cool if there was perhaps a neon sign in the background behind the subject, just to provide some motivated backlight. As I didn't have a neon sign, I knew that this would be something that I'd have to composite later on in post. So I made sure to leave a blank space on the wall behind, and not to move my head back as to obstruct the space where the neon sign was going to be placed. Again, all of the lighting has to be motivated. So as I wanted a diner setting, I thought that the bright red neon sign would work nicely and would be a nice contrast to the cooler light coming through the window. Behind the subject I had a LED panel with a red gel at around 20% intensity. I then had another LED panel above the table at 2500 Kelvin as a more of a warmer tungsten light to emulate perhaps a hanging light fixture over the table in the diner. Finally, I thought that the camera side of the subject's face seemed a little too dark and moody. You know, you've got all of this light that's coming through the window and from the neon sign and from the tungsten lights, and it's all bouncing around the diner. There's going to be some fill light on that face. It's not really going to be totally in shadow. So I had a 5-in-1 reflector with the white side just to fill in some of those shadows a little bit. As for the lighting, that's pretty much it. One very important element to the overall scene was to use haze. This gave so much more depth to the image, and it really helped to achieve that cinematic look. To keep the cost down, I thought that instead of using a fog or preferably a proper haze machine, that I'd try this out. It's basically haze in a can, and I first heard about it a few years back when Film Riot actually made a video reviewing it. So I picked a can up to test it out, and you know what, it's actually not bad. For a small setting like this, it was actually ideal. Plus I only used about a quarter of the can over multiple takes. It's certainly not comparable to using a hazer, but it allowed me to keep the cost of this build way down. One thing to bear in mind is that using the haze did make the overall image a lot flatter. This was just using the A7 III, so it only records in 8-bit. I obviously would have much preferred to shoot with something with a higher colour depth, ideally 10-bit 422 and upwards, but you know, beggars can't be choosers. So after grading, this is what I ended up with. If you like the video, then don't forget to give it a like. It really helps me out in beating the YouTube algorithm. Leave a comment and let me know if there's anything that you would have done differently with this lighting setup. Finally, subscribe and hit the bell icon to stay updated with all of my future uploads. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.